Art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. Art is a journey of the free soul. The artist's job is to witness his time in history. The function of the artist in a disturbed society is to give an awareness of the universe, to ask the right questions, and to elevate the mind. These are quotes by various artists from different time periods in history, and they show us that the role of an artist in a society has been a much talked about, much discussed, a much debated topic. And we are here today to discuss this topic specifically in the context of classical Indian dance. Do dancers have a social obligation when they create their work? Should they address socio-political issues through their dance? And is this dance the appropriate medium to address social issues? My name is Priya Bangal, and on behalf of Samvād Boston, I welcome you all to Tête-à-tête with Dr. Maya Kulkarni and Dr. Aparna Sindhoor. Dr. Maya Kulkarni is a celebrated dancer choreographer, and she is also a professor of political philosophy at William Paterson University. And Dr. Aparna Sindhur is an acclaimed dance theater artist, and she has produced several works on socially relevant themes to rave reviews. Mayadi and Aparna, welcome to Tête-à-tête.
Thank you, Priya. Good
Aparna
morning.
is joining us from the West Coast, so it's bright and early there, 7:30 a.m. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Mayadi, good morning. How are you today?
Good. Looking forward to this.
I am as well.
Two of my favorite subjects to talk about.
So I invite our viewers on YouTube to read more about our speakers in the description of the YouTube page that they're watching. So to kick things off for today, I will invite both of you to express your views on this topic very briefly in under 3 minutes. And once each of you has done that, then we can open it up for a broader conversation, answer some questions and answer some questions from the audience as well. To our live audience watching on YouTube, please feel free to type your questions in the live chat window that is on the right-hand side of the YouTube page that you're watching. And I request you to please keep your questions concise, maybe limit them to 1 or 2 sentences. Since we are reading them in real time, it helps to keep things moving along. Thank you. So without further ado, I invite Aparna to share her views with us. But before she starts, she would like to share a short video clip from one of her works. So I'm going to try and share that first. If you can just bear with me. Aparna, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Priya. Thanks, everyone. So I'm very happy to be part of Samvād's event. This is a great initiative. I would like to congratulate all of you for, opening up this medium here. So for me, art and social justice always have been hand in hand. I would refrain from calling myself artist activist or anything. I'm not activist. It's like a disservice to real activists who are on the streets doing hardcore work, like Meda Patkar or people like that. So I don't want to take that name, but I am an artist. So as an artist, I strongly believe that we have a social responsibility, whether we do classical art or contemporary art or whatever we want to label our work as. So I kind of try to call our work dance theater, because it is dance, it is theater, it has all kinds of different elements apart from just movement in a singular form. So, having said that, my training is in Bharatanatyam, specifically in Mysore style Bharatanatyam. I trained with Padma Bhushan Dr. K. Venkatalakshma and Lalita Srinivasan and Shakuntala and Sheila Sridhar. So I have like a good, solid background in Bharatanatyam, training in Mysore, and also yoga and Kalaripayattu martial arts and other forms. So what I'm trying to get to is that all these forms inform what I do on stage, whether I like it or not. They all seep in different elements, and music is also very key to our creation. So why I believe that art is a good medium for bringing topics of social justice is because it has that power. Artists have always been in the forefront of making people think, like in your initial reading of the quotes from great people. They all have said that because it's the truth of our history. If you see, many great artists have always challenged the patriarchy or oppression or all kinds of discrimination in their own way. It may not be like marching in the street, or it may not be like immediate change, like where everything vanishes and everybody is living in harmony. It's not like that. But at the same time, if we don't question, if we don't use our gifts or our medium to express what we are trying to do, then it is kind of like I feel that we are not being connected to our society. So that is my calling came from being part of. My mother was one of the first women to start this feminist organization in Mysore. She was one of the founding members, Samata, and my mother, Dr. Srivalli. She kind of like installed all these feminist ideas in my head as a little kid. I remember going on performing on the street using Bharatanatyam. That's all I knew at the time, just like doing a Koravanji or something, but giving it a feminist twist and so on. So having started there and having done a lot of theater in Mysore, I kind of like brought them together because there were a lot of things that would keep me awake and still does. So those are the things I want to tell. That's the story I want to tell. Of course I would like to tell story of Radha and Krishna and Shiva and Parvati as well, but at the same time I want to tell story of Dopti Mejan, Mahashweta Devi story, or so on. So all those things are really important for me personally. So I kind of like go from so like this, something that is bothering, to what I do on stage is like a journey. So it's a process, and because it's live art, performing art, so that's a blessing because we keep reinventing our work, and then how we share with people what we do in terms of expression of this kind of work. So, and then I also think for the audience, I think of them as witness. So I really believe in this concept in the Indian aesthetic theory about audience being the Sahridaya, the equal hearted, because I don't go on stage and I'm not on a pedestal saying I'm better than you, so you watch me or you get lost. I don't work like that. My mind is always like, okay, whoever is watching, they are my equal hearted people. So they are there. So I need to share this with humility and respect. At the same time, I need to have my conviction. So I say what I say on stage, with the support of all these, my collaborators, Raju and Anil and Isaac. And at the same time, we also have the collaborators that are not present, like Mashweta Devi or whose our story that is coming live, and then people who made me, like my gurus and so on. So it's like a collective effort to give it to the Sakhridaya, who is also giving back while we perform. So that is the shared conviction or belief of social justice coming live on stage, and then keeping it.
I want
I
to
would
briefly
what I-
interrupt just to give you a chance to wrap up in about the next 30 seconds or so, just in the
Sure.
interest of time.
Yeah, okay. So like I said, I don't label myself just as like an activist dancer or anything. And also a lot of people criticize me for doing Bharatanatyam the way I do, but I also think that I don't just do Bharatanatyam. I do Bharatanatyam, I climb rope, we have dancers doing Kalaripaya to Anil Nativeda, the co-director. He has brought Kalari in a very big way into our company. So all these things, and music, of course, I sing live on stage. So everything come together for expressing a thought or an idea or a story, and so I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Aparna. Mayadi, you are next.
Yes, it was wonderful to hear from Aparna, explain her in a sense of how she approaches the art, and I truly respect that greatly. I have personally never felt compelled to create a message. Not felt compelled. I may have done it. I have done it, but I don't feel that I need to restrict my creative impulse within any kind of ideological straitjacket, or or restricted in terms of having to create a purpose. Everything a dancer does, an artist does, has a purpose because they leave something of themselves, their identity, their creative genius, such as it might be, into that work of art. Um, I feel that it's the aesthetic momentum starting from some thought, some idea, some theme that should propel you where you need to go. Um, there, I've, for a moment, if I wear the other hat, as a political scientist, this controversy has been in the field for a very, very long time. Art for itself or art for use. And great minds have applied themselves on it with no conclusion as yet. Because the problem is we have to decide what do we mean by purpose. I think the question of relevance is different from purpose. Relevance means whatever is going on right now, you want to make a comment on it and bring awareness to the people. Purpose is it is a larger issue, larger subject. My purpose could be to create something profoundly beautiful, right? Through my art. My purpose could be to highlight something. My purpose could be to build a character, which is so intricate and complex, and unpack it through my dance. So the question of purpose is different from the question of relevance and the question of bringing activism in your dance, or having a message for it. The socialist realism would require for you to have that kind of purpose, an activist purpose, which comments on society and the injustices that are going on. But as I said, while I respect this enormously, I do not feel compelled personally to follow that route. Secondly, the things that I create are always for an individual dancer, because I have been only trained in one thing, one form of Indian dance, and that is Bharatanatyam. So I do not really have this whole canvas of other art forms to draw upon. And Bharatanatyam is a solo dance form. although it has been used as a ballet to create ballets and dance dramas, it's basically a solo art form where the dancer becomes so many different characters herself. So I like to stay with that. And what I have done or seek to do, try to do, is to open up the boundaries of this form. And when I'm doing that, I do not call it Bharatanatyam, but I'm calling it Shilpanatanam for a better word, where I feel that as if the dancers are stepping out of a portrait or out of a sculpture, and I will create a whole narrative around that. So I've been very enamored lately by the Greek mythology. So I've worked on Medea, and I've also worked on Plato's The Allegory of the Cave, which is a classic, standing classic in both political science and in the art world forever. So it could, I brought that. And there, if you want to say if there is a message, the message is very simple and it's very powerful message. And it is that we are forever being duped by false idols, prejudices, and narrowness of mind. The real thing to do, and which is where philosophy aids, is to get out of this cave in which we are bound and we think that's our world, and to open our eyes to the reality which is out there, defined as truth, beauty, and justice, because the truth and beauty leads to justice. So these are all three things together. So I'm not actually talking about relevance in terms of, commenting on COVID or problems there, or problems of women, or problems of the. My thing is to go to the larger themes that encompass much more universal issues. But I did not come to it because I wanted to say something. I came to it because I liked the allegory of the cave, and it automatically pushed me to that. So if we could just show a couple of things that we have on video, I'll stop.
Wonderful.
Just bear with me for a second.
So what you will see is a rehearsal video. It's but it shows what I'm trying to do is to create the characters, whatever that might be. A squirrel, somebody's splashing in the water. And then this is part of the Plato's cave. This this guy who comes out of the cave and discovers this reality outside and not the shadows of the cave, is open to this thousand suns, the bright light. So I have some moments there that might just give you an idea.
Okay, let's watch it.
So if I can just comment one sentence on the last one, we saw in rehearsal, she was turning. I wanted her to bend back as much as is possible, because she's looking at the whole universe. And then you saw that in the Plato's Cave that Mesmer danced for the Drive East recently.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for sharing your views. And it is very interesting that both of you come from a background of classical Bharatanatyam and have to create your work and give it the intent and purpose that you want. You have either pushed or stepped outside of the boundaries of that to create your work. But no, to bring the discussion into classical dance again, let's start with your backgrounds in Bharatanatyam a little bit. I have a question for Aparna specifically. Aparna, one could say that the strength of the classical dance medium is ability for nuanced expression. I mean, of course, I'm painting with broad strokes here for the sake of making a point, but one could say that that is the strength of the medium, to express poetic subtlety, nuanced expression. Whereas social message or activism, I know you don't like to call yourself an activist, but activism needs to be loud and clear and unambiguous. So how do you reconcile those two? How do you think that they are conflicting goals? How do you reconcile that in your dance?
Um, I mean, I think they're not that, different in the sense that, yes, there is like this, the notion of classical dance has this, subtlety and kind of nuanced expressions. But at the same time, like from where I work from is taking a story or like, taking something that has, like I said, that kept me awake at night and I really feel like I need to do something, then it is already a story that is brewing inside me. So all these things, like, when you look at any war or any kind of injustice happening around the world, you see people fall in love, people move away from each other. So there is that viraha coming out, like, it's not just Radha experiences viraha, the woman whose husband or partner or a man whose beloved has gone off to war, they experience viraha too. It's just even more harsh than like just waiting because he just didn't come or he's sleeping with another woman, right? It's much more like, gut wrenching because he may be dead. So there are these things, like for example the video clip you saw in Encounter, it's inspired by Mahashwata Devi's Draupadi, that story. So Dopti Mejan, she's the main character in that. So there, her viraha is that her husband is killed by the military. So he's keeping a watch, at least in our story, he's keeping a watch of the forest and his community, and he's shot from down, and then he falls dead. So her viraha is what I express. Like I reach out to my classical training to express that viraha, but at the same time, it's not enough to just say, oh, he didn't come, my bed is not with him now. It's more like he's gone forever. Then she's captured and she's raped, and so it becomes even more disturbing. Yeah, there is this loudness, there is this softness, there is the tenderness. At the same time, there is also like, stop it kind of. So I think even in Bharatanatyam we see all of that. Shiva is the one who does dance of destruction. That's loud and that's really powerful, right? So I think we need to, at least I feel like we can reach out wherever we want within what we know.
Thank you for your response. So Mayadi, I have a question for you on a related topic of Bharatanatyam. So Bharatanatyam, as we know it today, developed in the socio-political conditions in the 18th and 19th centuries under royal and feudal patronage. But we as a society since then have moved on from that political system. So isn't it natural for the dance form also to move on and to explore newer content that is more relevant to the times? Isn't it, or do you think it is just the natural, it should happen in the natural flow of things? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are this. As I said, I don't particularly put too much store by this business of relevance. Why, as an artist, do I have to be relevant? If you don't want to watch me, don't watch me. If you find me boring, don't do it. You know, if you find me indulgent, don't do it. I mean, that's entirely up to the audience to choose. But yes, the themes. The problem is that we have narrowed down our repertoire too much to what has been handed down. But there is a whole treasure of poetry and text out there. I mean, sky is the limit. We don't have to keep on doing the same old Radha Krishna, or Shiva, or whatever the stories that we think. And mind you, all these stories are really like plugs. You know, we hang our hat there, but we really move on underneath that and move on to explore the emotions. Okay, so the Radha and Krishna are just objects, you see. From there, what the real purpose of the dance is not to tell story about Radha and Krishna. It is to really, show the emotional intensity with which a man and woman, or the kind of complexity of sentiments that exist, where there is adoration, there is bhakti, there is love, there is flirtation. This is a fantastically complex mix. Okay, and it is all what, how can you ask, is this relevant? I don't ask that, but yes, because it is Radha and Krishna, these are mythological figures. But I think that depends on the quality of dance and how you interpret a particular, lyric, and what lyrics you go to. You keep on going back to the same old lyrics, then they already have, given a certain impression. They evoke certain images immediately in the minds of the audience. So as I said, there is tremendous amount of, there are vernacular languages from which you can draw. You can draw from Sanskrit. There's a huge amount of poetry out there.
So I have an allied question for you, Mayadi. So for this, to play with this dance form or to practice this dance form, do you have to, or do we have to keep drawing from that same well of ancient literature or devotional texts or myth and legend? Or can we create newer content while still doing that dance form, doing justice to the dance form? And if so, what should our guiding principles be?
Is this addressed to me, Priya?
Yes, yes.
I give you an example. Recently, we had this Six Dancers Festival just yesterday. And I had worked on a Persian poet who's a contemporary poet. Under Islamic, rule, he cannot express himself whatsoever. So I took that Persian poetry and created a whole dance dramaturgy as to how, the dream that the poet dreams of a city that is going to give him free, where he can freely write poetry. But he's caught in this and now here, where he has no latitude to do any of that. And he's struggling, and he wants to go there. He sets off on a metaphorical journey through stormy seas, and all that comes down on him, the whole power of the state. And yet he keeps the journey going.
So was this done in the Bharatanatyam?
No, it wasn't, but it could be done in Bharatanatyam, because the dancer I was working with was a Kathak dancer. But it didn't matter. The point is that you could bring all this. It doesn't have to be that. But the technique is there. And certain, how would an individual dancer with her vocabulary of dance and Angika Abhinaya will be able to express this? That's what the classical arts give me. They give me a language. I'll use that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayadi. I have a related question for Aparna. So it's about the aesthetics of the form. Bharatanatyam developed in a, as I already said, in a certain context of society. and it developed simultaneously with its content. You know, the form developed in temples and courts of 18th, 19th centuries, along with the music and the poetry and the imageries and the aesthetic, all of it co-developed. So when you try to, or when you attempt to bring in a different content, newer content, um, do you find that this vocabulary or this form of Bharatanatyam is conducive to it, or do you find yourself looking for newer syntax, or how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The thing is, when you look at Bharatanatyam, also there was it kept changing as we move into different contexts, whether it's temple or the court. Like my teacher Venkata Lakshma, she was in the Mysore Palace. She was one of the Asthana Vidushis. So she would say that they used to do something called English Javali. So there was a Javali in English because Jayacha Maharajendra Vadiyar was a great scholar, so he was interested in all languages, and then there came an English Javali. I mean, I wouldn't call it great poetry, but there was an English Javali because there were English speaking people who wanted to watch it. So they did change it, that is not from the tradition or whatever historical context wasn't there for that. But at the same time, when we create work, for me, not everything can be expressed through just Bharatanatyam vocabulary. Of course, I look for it a lot within Bharatanatyam framework because I know that's what I know the best. But at the same time, sometimes we go beyond that. So if I need to express something else, then I need to go into some kind of other forms, whether it's Malcolm pole or climbing the rope or flying in the air or so on and so forth. So we use whatever we get. Sometimes it just means of like singing, sometimes it's just breath. We did a scene with there was a drought, and then there is everybody like pining for water. They were not pining for Krishna or Shiva, but they were pining for water. So there is this whole scene we do with just breathing like very deeply. And then the audience, so many people have come and told me that they felt thirsty after watching. So there is that, the rasanubhava is happening right there. Some real examples of that, which warms my heart. But at the same time, it is happening because we could use what we got, which is our breath. So like if you see in Encounter, there is a rape scene. So for that, I would not go with doing Bharatanatyam choreography. Of course one could do it, I'm not saying you cannot, but I just felt like I wanted the audience to witness it without taking their eyes off. I don't want them to go like this because we are all part of this crime. So I wanted them to watch it. So we made this big pole, and then the rape happens on the pole. So it is just, visually it is wanting to watch, but at the same time what it is expressing was like really harsh.
Yeah. Should we take a look at that
Yeah,
video
sure.
since
Yeah.
you have it shared? Bear with me, audience. That was very powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Priya, can I just say something?
Oh, yes.
you know, that it's Aparna, it's very, very powerful, very, very powerful. What you brought up, startlingly so. Only thing wanted to say is that, see, Aparna's genius lies in making the right choices to express whatever she is, whatever theme is. I impose a discipline of in my creativity in saying that I'm not going to explore colory and this and that, none of that. I will just explore. Then it is a single dancer. Okay, so it imposes a different kind of discipline in moving art in a particular, a creativity in a particular direction. Both are highly difficult things to do. You know, hers is making the right choices. Mine is maintaining that, finding within that, the discipline that I self-impose on myself.
True, I agree. Yeah, it's as hard to like find within the whole, one form, and then trying to explore all the deep, meanings and expressions.
Yeah.
Not even meaning. Like, yeah.
Yes.
So, Mayati, related to what you just said, there are certain things that are, as you said earlier, are universal um, emotions or feelings, or they have always been true, or they have always also been values that we value as a human race. Like be kind, be generous, don't be deceitful. These are always, as a civilization, we have valued them. But then certain values of society have changed, like even in the last 100, 200 years, like treatment of women, or in the Indian context, the caste system or race in other contexts. It has changed considerably, and it aspires to continue to change. So do you think the traditional form leaves us room to reflect these changing values? And do we need to negotiate that carefully?
Um, I think there's a very complex answer to that, which I really don't want to go into because it'll take much longer to explore it. But I will start with the thing that even traditional repertoire, classics like Nandanar's, poetry and what we do in Bharatanatyam, where he is an obsequious, he's coming there to the temple, he can't get into the temple and he urges the god, to so turn to him, etc. Now, who is watching it? You see, we as modern people watching it says, "My God, that is a terrible thing that's happening." But this is a traditional thing that every Bharatanatyam dancer learns at some point or the other. So it is really a relationship between who is watching and who is doing and what it is that they are doing. That equation will change from in all three ways. Okay. So you say, so for me to go out and say, okay, I'm going to do something that's going to shock the hell out of my audience and get them to focus on this particular thing. Okay, depending on what I do, it can fall flat. I've seen any number of such message bearing dance things really don't bring it out at all. While a superb dancer, who's sort of emoting on the sorrowness, on the oppression that is being indulged, brings out the reverse kind of reaction in the thing. So that's why I said it's a complex thing. You don't have two sentence answer to this. Okay. But I personally do not feel, as I said to start with, compelled to do any particularly activist radical work because I think that that's too restricting, for me. And the business of relevance. I mean, today we're talking about COVID and how we're caught in this. Tomorrow there'll be something else. Day after it will be something else. But oppression has always been a constant thing. Search for freedom has always been a constant thing. Okay. So those topics can be indulged, can be taken up in variety of ways, not just modernistic sensibilities, right?
Thank you. Aparna, we have a question for you from the audience, and it's divulging a little bit from our discussion, but I think we should address it. Thinking back to when you were learning from Venkatalakshama, What was her feeling about social responsibility as a dancer?
um, to be honest, I don't really know what she thought about things like this. I was too young, and she was, she was same age as my great grandmother, so it's not like something I would sit and discuss with her. If it is with my other gurus, Lalita Srinivasan or somebody, maybe I will sit and discuss with her now. But with Venkatalakshama, it was more like she says I do, kind of thing. And but having said that, she was very open minded in many ways, in the sense that she would always, like I did, a dance choreography for evening length of work called A Concise Portrait of Indian Woman, and I research like women from ancient times to modern poetry, representing women characters, right? So but all done in Bharatanatyam style. So she did see that, and she was very supportive of it. She's like, oh, very, I mean, she will never say very good, and also, but she was not like, oh, why are you doing this, ayo karma. She didn't do that. So which means that she approved of it. So, and at the same, and then she would say, her favorite, I mean, her favorite line would be like, if you're ashamed of your body, don't dance. That's a very radical statement. So I didn't really quite get it. As a kid, I didn't know how to interpret that, or it didn't mean much. But as I grew older and as I started teaching, then I realized there is a lot of shame we carry within our body, and then not being ashamed of ourselves is a big thing, whether it's you're a dancer or not.
So there's one more question from the audience. I don't completely understand it, but and it's not directed towards anybody in particular. So I don't completely understand it, but I'm going to read it. Maybe you will find more clarity. If we want to create a work of art of political relevance, wouldn't we have more impact as legislators, senators, or policymakers instead? I
um,
think I think what they mean is, then why create art? Why not become legislators? Um,
Well, there is an argument for that. I mean, just write an article, you know, uh, do an op-ed, uh, write a book. If you must use the medium of dance, well, the idiom of dance imposes certain limitations, like any idiom. Uh,
and I think I would say that we have to be in legislature, I mean, work there, write a book, sing a song, make a dance, make a theater. Everything has to happen, because there is not one way we can you know make the society better. Making a beautiful dance is one way, and then being in politics, direct, hardcore party politics is another way. So everything has to happen, otherwise it's not going to change. So what we do on stage changes people's minds and hearts. Not even change like in the sense, okay, now I'm going to go on the street and stand with Black Lives Matter. Maybe somebody would, but that's not what, at least personally, I don't like think, okay, I'm going to motivate, I'm going to change the world now. No, I'm just like saying, oh, this is happening, and then how we tell a story of Krishna or something, same way I'm telling a story of something else that is, you know, that is touching my heart. So that if that touches somebody else's heart, that's all. Then they are part of legislative assembly or something. They can go change the, yeah.
I think there's another question that is similar. It says, is it always the responsibility of an artist to affect social change? And I think both Aparna and Mayati just addressed that. Um,
I don't think it is artist's responsibility to do that. It is an individual's perspective. They want to do it, fine. They don't want to do it, fine. I mean, how can we compel an artist always to do something? I don't know. But if they take it on themselves, I mean, well and good. That's what the purpose is then.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and at the same time, I also believe just not even just artists, right? It's a human responsibility to be, um, aware, and I'm not saying everybody should believe in one thing, but everybody should believe in compassion and love, so that we are not hurting each other, you know. So in that sense, yes, it is artist's responsibility. And I always quote this very famous poet Ali Sardar Jafri. Once he was asked, are you a progressive poet? So he said, if you are a poet, you're already a progressive, so you don't have to say progressive poet, you know. So I think in that way we all have some kind of not with where you can be still doing very traditional repertoire, but at the same time, if you're not if you are, you know, so a lot of people use art for propaganda or hatred or something that really scares me. So like how we are saying we are going to use this for, or say talk about social justice or whatever, somebody else may be talking about something else, you know. So that is the danger of using art, you know.
Not
So
only art, but mythology too. I mean,
yeah,
this,
exactly.
I forget the name of the person, was very famous, this Ramayana and Mahabharata, on that went on and on for years on Indian television, and the whole audience was riveted to it. It is such a one single perspective interpretation of Ramayana and Mahabharata, and upholding all the time this kind of Brahminic Hindu, interpretation of both these things. To me, it was annoyance, all right, because the real thing is so varied. Nobody takes the trouble to find that out. When they think of Ramayana, they only think of this television series and what they have seen in it. So I think that art can be narrowing of the perspective rather than broadening of the perspective. So I think once you accept a responsibility like that, I think it's very difficult. You have to be very, very vigilant. And what is the guarantee who will use art in what form? I mean, look at all these BJP people running around, using symbols derived from temples and this and that in order to push for the propaganda that they have. So this is very difficult. That's why I like to have lines, for an artist, just be free to do what you're doing. You have to be very careful.
Yeah.
The other side of that, Mayadi, and this is, again, I should, this is not so much related to artistry, but learning and practice of this dance in the community in North America. Usually the Indian, again, I'm painting with broad strokes, but the Indian community in North America comes from a background of social privilege and of economic security, and they have the option or have the luxury to opt out of this difficult conversations, on matters of social justice, which they're known to choose to exercise that option. And this is also the community that learns and practices this traditional dance that stays away from, any social political issues. So do you think in a way the art facilitates that passiveness and that inaction and that non-participation or being complicit through non-participation?
Not the younger generation that I can see. In fact, the young artists are all out there. And in fact, my complaint is a little reverse to that. In other words, with very little solid kind of background in dance, they're ready to create because they're so anxious to say something about what's going on in society. And being young, they have to, be active, be out there. And that turns into kind of a really artless expression. And I mean in an innocent sense, artless. I don't mean without art, but I mean kind of artless. It's also self-indulgent, because art must rise above a certain level of everyday kind of. It's not a fashion that is in fashion today, not going to be in fashion tomorrow. I do believe in creating something that has a degree of permanence.
Related question, I guess, from the audience. what do you have to say to Indian classical dancers out there who want to create new dances on topics like Black Lives Matter or Me Too? It's not directed towards anybody in particular, so whoever wants to take it.
Aparna, I want to take that.
I mean, yes, of course, like Mayadi, I totally agree in the sense that without real education in any form, forget dance, right? You want to write poetry, you need to know language, you need to, have poetic thought. So that is practice. It's a lot of hard work. Yes, believing in something, believing Black Lives Matter, supporting Me Too movement, all that is very very cool and good, but at the same time if you don't have the training to express, then it all falls flat, to quote you, Mayadi. I think it is in that sense, yes, you make art, but at the same time you have that strong foundation in whatever form it is, right? And I think having said that, also a lot of young Indian dancers find it hard to relate to, like if we keep teaching, especially in Abhinaya, right? In Nritya, yes, it's a hardcore physical practice. Yes, it's easy to understand the rhythm or practice to understand it. But when it comes to emotional quality, then we need to make sense of what we are doing, right? So if I tell a young dancer, we joke in class, oh, they had too much time, that's why they were just like, tying, making flower garlands and wearing and throwing, and how much time they have, right? So there is no there is no way to hold on to it, but at the same time everybody falls in love, right? I hope at least everybody falls in love. So then there is that some kind of like, okay, what do you do for your lover or whatever, right? So there is that kind of connection. And then today we are all seeing what's happening in Black Lives Matter and everything. So I think if that is what is your calling, then you should use your tool to express it, and which we have done. Actually, we did a piece based on Nina Simone's poem for Black Lives Matter fundraiser one time. And so yeah, I think but without proper training, I don't think any form is going to support the logic.
I also think that Black Lives Matter, of course, I went on along with my colleagues, we protested, we were out in the streets. It was not a dance, but it matters to me to go become part of it. But there are issues, for heaven's sakes, beyond America.
Yeah.
COVID and Black Lives Matter. Okay, if you are an artist, you belong to the world. And the kind of atrocities, the horrifying things that are happening elsewhere, compared to that, what is happening in this country is comparatively mild, shall we say? Okay, so there is no dearth of subjects to think about. You will say, okay, I'm dancing here, so it has to be relevant. So see, this again, this business of relevance, comes where what happens to your real, you have any kind of priorities about what is more important and what is less important. Somebody is being killed, mass killing somewhere, okay, as opposed to being locked up a little bit for a while voluntarily in our situation here. Where is the judgment here? See, so I think that's why I think that it is self-indulgent to some extent. On part of it, they want to be part of the community, and therefore they want to do Black Lives Matter. I'm appreciative of the impulse, but whether that lends itself to an immediate production of art thing, just be a little careful and a little more cautious is what I would say.
Maya, the related question to that, as these modern social issues come up, it seems that presenters and organizers increasingly want to see that reflected in art. And they often ask for works with themes of, diversity or inclusion or justice or, And practitioners of traditional arts increasingly are facing this pressure, so to say, for lack of a better word, to produce works related to that. So how do you negotiate that? How do you
Well, you have to do something for a living, and you have to do something for your soul. So if you need grants, write a grant that will get you a grant. Use the money not only to do what you promised to do, but use that facility to create what your soul cries out for. Because today that's a practical. So I'm not saying that after all, art is a very lonely path. Okay, that's the way it is. You chosen it, you traverse it. But if you want to be practical about it, there are some compromises you have to make. We all do. That's what you do.
Aparna, do you have any response to that? Or
I think it is kind of difficult situation if you're an artist of color in this country, for example, right? That you are expected, you're right, somebody may ask, oh, what is, we are working on such and such a theme for this season, what do you have, right? So we have been asked things like that. What I normally say is, if I have something related to that, we give it. Otherwise, if it's a commissioned work, yes, we will do it. But if it's not commissioned, you just, oh, what do you want to, you have something, then I don't cook up something and throw it, because it takes a long time to make a production. So we don't have that kind of luxury to say, okay, we are going to do it today. But at the same time, I think the deeper question is, like, we are all bound by these grants and these resources that is so lacking. And as soon as they see a certain kind of body, and they hear my accent, they want to put us in the ethnic group, like, oh, we are going to do, it's not an ethnic festival, oh, it's only for contemporary art. I've heard it so many times, and it's unfortunate we still hear it, like, so suddenly ballet is contemporary and Bharatanatyam is not contemporary. I don't understand that, because everybody, not everybody will relate to ballet, and not everybody will relate to Bharatanatyam. That problem always is there, right? So suddenly you see some abstract movement in modern or contemporary dance, doesn't make it contemporary or not traditional, so it is a very deep question to, we have to continuously ask and challenge the bodies that make these grants and who have the power. I think we have to break those barriers, which is very hard, but we're all there fighting.
okay, thank you. We're almost out of time, but I have one final question for you, Aparna. Since you address social issues through your work, um, in your experience, what resonance does this art have in real life? In other words, once the curtain comes down, how do you bridge the gap between your audience and between the subject of your work? Very quickly, if you can answer that. We're
Yeah, I
almost
mean, like I said, I'm not an activist. I'm not going out there and calling for real action, but I want people to start thinking, which not always it happens, and what they do with it, whether they go to party politics or do something, as long as there is compassion involved, I'm happy about it. And sometimes if there is a direct issue related, we did a piece on Narmada Bachao Andolan. So that time it was story based on SM Raju's river rights work. So then he wrote it from a point of view of a one Adivasi woman, but it was imaginary character. But there were so many women when I performed in Narmada Valley, they were totally like, oh, I know what you're talking about, because it was their story that we were telling. So then in those contexts, when we did for aid and all that, they had these tables where people could sign up to volunteer and you know do the next step kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aparna. Well, as anticipated, this has been a very interesting conversation, but we are at the end of an hour, and I'm afraid that that's all we have time for today. But I think we have discussed several important points that we should all, as we should all continue to reflect on as artists, as individuals, and as a society. And I hope that today's conversation has given us enough food for thought that we can take back to our lives, to our work, and to our practice. So I would like to take a minute to thank our speakers, Dr. Aparna Sindhur and Dr. Maya Kulkarni. Aparna, thank you very much for joining us today, bright and early at 7:30 a.m. Since you're on the West Coast.
Thank you, Priya. It was great. I really enjoyed speaking to you and Mayadi. Yeah.
And if our viewers would like to know more about you and your work or see more of your work, how can they find you and reach to you?
They can go to Facebook, Navarasa Dance Theatre, or navarasa.org. We'll have information there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Aparna. Mayadi, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you for bringing your insights from political science as well as arts to this conversation.
Thank
And if our audience would like to know more about you and your work, do you have some pointers for us?
Well, yes, I'm working with several dancers here, Mesma Balsare. We were working on two new things. We already finished. We have a whole repertoire of what we call Shilpa Natanam. And I had Greek themes. I want to do another Greek theme. We have a kind of a version of Meghadutam that I have constructed myself. I have a couple of other things going on. And with Sonali, I'm working on Vidyapati, composing on that. And with another dancer, Bharati, I am working on a number of something that would be similar to Javalis called Chaitis. And they are light and pleasurable and light-hearted and frivolous and mischievous. So it's a very different aspect that I'm exploring and enjoying it very much.
Okay, we have some samples of Mayadi's choreographic works in the description of the YouTube video that you're watching. And we have links to Aparna's website and Facebook page as well, and some contact information for them. So to all our viewers watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching along, participating, and asking great questions. I hope that you subscribe to your YouTube channel and our Facebook page so that we can continue to bring more such conversations to you on matters related to and of importance to Indian classical dance and music. On behalf of everyone at Samvād Boston, thank you, take care, and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aparna, nice to see you.